Hey soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast. I am your host Nick. Thanks again for joining me as we are talking Chicago Fire, Major League Soccer, and a little usmnt in this episode. This Saturday, Decision Day is upon us, the final regular season day for Major League Soccer, October 19th. The Chicago Fire are hosting Nashville SC to determine in part who is the worst team in the Eastern Conference. Thankfully, San Jose was even worse and is taking home the wooden spoon this year for the worst team in MLS. But we've got a three-way race for worst in the Eastern Conference with Nashville, New England, and Chicago. Actually, it's more of a two-way race. New England sitting on 31 points, Chicago sitting on 30, currently bottom of the East, and Nashville with 33. However, New England's playing Miami, who's chasing the single-season point record. So if you assume New England's going to lose, if Chicago draws, it looks like they are going to be the worst team in the East. Chicago needs to win to not be the worst team in the Eastern Conference. But anyway, that's not all we're going to talk about, how bad the Fire are. We're going to preview this game against Nashville. We're going to look at some other Chicago Fire headlines. And like I said, talk a little USMNT at the end of the show. But first, a little housekeeping. I just want to mention, as we go through the Major League Soccer playoffs and into the off-season, I still am going to be trying to put out 2 episodes a week. This last couple weeks have been a little less productive, I will say, given just some things going on in life and at work. But my goal is to still put out 2 episodes every week, published either Sunday or Monday night, and then either Wednesday or Thursday night. So if there's anything you want to hear discussed on the show, anything you want to highlight, please continue to reach out. Email me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com, or reach out on social media at glasshousesoccer on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Would love to hear from you in the off-season. Let me know what your off-season plans are. And if I see any of you at the tailgate this Saturday at Soldier Field before the Nashville game, let me know what you want to hear. Let's keep this conversation growing, as well as grow the show and the interest in the Fire and Major League Soccer. But as I said, our main goal today, let's preview the Chicago Fire's last regular season matchup in 2024. Early game, because it's decision day, you've got the entire Eastern Conference kicking off at 5 o'clock, and then you've got the entire Western Conference kicking off later in the evening. But let's take a look at their opponent, Nashville. Nashville, like I said, 13th in the East, eliminated from playoff contention, sitting on 33 points. They have 33 matches played with 8 wins, 16 losses, and 9 draws. 35 goals for, 54 goals against for a whopping minus 19 goal differential. Barely a better record at home than away. Only 3 road wins, 3 road draws, 10 road losses. Not that the Chicago Fire are all that much better at home. 5 home wins, 7 home losses, and 4 home draws for the Fire. But, you know, they only got 2 wins on the road. So maybe the Fire technically are a better team at home. Looking at Nashville, who stands out? If you look at their goal-scoring leaders, it's Sam Surridge with 11, Hani Mukhtar with 8, Alex Moyle with 4, and Teal Bunbury with 3. And yeah, I probably mispronounced Alex Moyle's name, and that has been going around social media, that all these broadcasters pronounce it differently despite being on MLS calls all season. So maybe I did it as a joke. Maybe I did it because I haven't heard it the right way yet. I'll let you decide. But also looking at their assist leader, it's Hani Mukhtar with 10, Shaq Moore, Jacob Schaffelberg, and Drew Yearwood with 4 assists each. So the offense pretty clearly flows through Hani Mukhtar. And it has been one of their most productive players since his signing, as well as this season. How do they line up? In their last matchup against New York City, which was a 3-0 loss for Nashville, they lined up in a 4-4-2, or kind of a 4-4-1-1, with Hani Mukhtar playing a little bit more of a deep-lying attacking player. Joe Willis is their starting goalkeeper, and from left to right, it was Daniel Lovitz, Jake Maher, Walker Zimmerman, and Shaq Moore in the back line. You've got Alex Moyle, Anibal Godoy, now self-conscious every time I say his name. Patrick Yazbek and Jacob Schaffelberg across the middle. Then you've got Hani Mukhtar as kind of your deeper lying striker, and Sam Surridge as that central striker, lone striker up top, really trying to stretch the back lines there. But you will notice that Jacob Schaffelberg and I can't say any of their names tonight. Jacob Schaffelberg and Shaq Moore will really push high up that right side. They will try to work a little give and go. There will be overlapping runs made by those guys, and they will try to slot that ball across to Surridge, to Mukhtar, to Doyle, to Godoy, who make those second or third runs into the box, those far post, those late arriving runs. Also, we know Daniel Lovitz does also like to get into kind of the corner areas of opposing defenses and play crosses in. He gets a lot of crosses off and has traditionally been a guy to provide a lot of service into the box. And again, only how many assists does he have on? Let's pull up their assist list and see if he's actually being effective in getting those crosses in and scoring goals. But this season, not as much for him. Only 1 assist for Daniel Lovitz. But he does have, as far as key passes go, only 27 key passes, which isn't a terrible amount for a defender. I mean, if you're an attacking midfielder, you're going to want to be, like Hani Mukhtar, 85 key passes to lead the team. But 27 for an outside back, not a terrible number. So he does get up and involved into the attack. So what you need to look out for if you're the Chicago Fire defense are those direct counterattacks right up the middle of the field with Mukhtar feeding Surridge, or those wingers pushing forward, working some overlaps, overloads, and then playing those crosses into the middle. Additionally, you have to look out for Walker Zimmerman on set pieces. Now, if you look at these two players, maybe this will tell you why there have been so many struggles with Nashville SC this season. Looking at Hani Mukhtar's year, he's started 30 games out of the 31 he's played in. So he's been very consistent for Nashville. Since joining in 2020 over the summer, he has played at least 31 games every season. And that 2020, since he came in the summer, he played in 15 matches. So about that pace. He is a workhorse for Nashville SC, rarely missing games. Now, he starts most games, but we have seen at times him get subbed out relatively early compared to some other top players in MLS. But this season, not his best statistical season by far. In fact, if you take away that half season in 2020, this is his worst statistical season. 8 goals, 10 assists. His prior worst season was last year, 15 goals and 11 assists. So he has dropped quite a bit with his goal production this season. His shooting is down a little bit. His shots on target are down a little bit. So he is not having that same kind of attacking year as he has had in the past. Now you want to look at Walker Zimmerman, who's their leader on defense. He's only played in 24 of 34 league games in these last 2 seasons. Presumably it'll be 25 this season. And while he is a threat on set pieces, big body, tall guy, can jump, he only has 1 goal this season, 2 goals last season, and his best goal-scoring season in MLS came in 2022 with Nashville when he scored 4 goals. Also, he has got a couple other 4-goal seasons with LAFC and FC Dallas back in his prior playing days there. So he is not contributing on offense, but his availability has also hurt him. He's been out 9 games this season, so that has been hard for them to really shift their defenders around, especially with Shaq Moore also getting called up for some international duty. It has been very difficult for him for Nashville SC to accommodate them being out of the lineup. Additionally, he's winning aerial duels at about 76% clip, which actually is his best season as far as aerial duels since 2016 with Dallas. So he still is a threat in the air on the defensive end, but he's just not, I'd say, that much of the impact player that Nashville has come to rely on Walker Zimmerman to be. Still a very good defender, probably not in the picture for the U.S. anymore, which I think a lot of USMNT fans would be happy to hear about, but not that imposing presence as he was a couple of years ago. So that is where we're coming from with Nashville. You know how they want to play, you know who their impact players are, and so it's now up to the Chicago Fire to come up with a game plan against that. And we have seen how Frank Lopez likes to clog the middle against these teams who love to counterattack and quick strike. So I expect he's going to stick with his usual 3 center back system. I expect we're going to see the 3 midfielders just bunched in the middle as usual and trying to hit on a counter. And it's going to be, for the last game of the season, probably a very low-scoring affair. I will, just because it's the last game of the season, I will predict a 2-1 victory for the Chicago Fire in this one, just to kind of keep things positive here as we move into the offseason, as we move into some other headlines and things. But I do think the Fire will be able to absorb this Nashville attack, and I think with the bump with Gregg Berhalter being around, he's not coaching, he's not officially taking over until the 20th, until the day after the last match of the season. But I think there will be a little bit of a vibe. I think there'll be some good energy in the stands. It's fan appreciation night, so I think everyone's going to be feeling good for whatever festivities the Chicago Fire are doing. I have talked to an employee of the Chicago Fire who had just said, like, I am exhausted. We are working so hard to do all these things for the last match of the season. So there's going to be a lot going on in the stadium. So get there early, take part in everything. They're giving away rally towels. You know, I usually would think those would be something at the beginning of the season you give away, so that way fans can keep them throughout the season. But hey, this season the Chicago Fire are going to rally in the off season. So yeah, give the rally towels out in the last game of the season so we can rally around Gregg Berhalter and all the great moves he's going to make this off season. Right, Fire fans? Right. I love it. Okay, speaking of Gregg Berhalter and all the moves that he's going to make this off season, I had the absolute pleasure of talking to a Chicago Fire youth coach couple weeks ago. Came out, helped coach my son's team, more on that later, and he ran a practice for us, taught the kids some new drills and things, and we were just kind of talking casually afterwards, and I'm like, yeah, you work the games, like, you're around the office, like, how's it going? He goes, everyone's so excited, this Gregg Berhalter signing is great. And I said, yeah, that's cool, I hear there's going to be some roster turnover. And he just kind of paused and kind of did like that shoulder check and is like, if you thought the Shaqiri signing was big, they are going after someone who's a bigger name and a bigger signing than Shaqiri. So that's what I was told by a Chicago Fire youth coach. We'll see what name that is. People are saying it's Weston McKennie. People are saying it's Antoine Griezmann. People are saying a lot of things at this point right now that are all just conjecture and speculation. But man, it's fun to talk about, right? Okay, let's take a quick halftime break here and remind everyone that this show is sponsored by Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Icelandic for clear, Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best. And Skira is available at your local 7-Eleven. And as we talk about Skira, if there's any other companies out there or any individuals that want to promote themselves, their product, their brand, please reach out to me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com, and we can come up with a sponsorship, partnership, marketing package, as well as maybe sponsor some additional content over on the social pages as well. So getting into the second half of the show here, I do want to follow up about the Fire youth coach coming out to our practice. I had the absolute pleasure of speaking with Roberto Diaz within the Chicago Fire Soccer in the Community program. They run all the summer camps, the holiday camps. I think they also run the Discovery camps, which are to my understanding, they're like day camps where you sign your kid up for it, you put their info in the database, and then you take your U8s out or your U10s out, and they actually get put through the paces by academy coaches, and this is where the academy coaches can identify some talent, rather than either them just going out and scouting or having people show up to academy tryouts like a cold tryout. They're actually going out and looking at U8s and U10s around the Chicago area and in the city, and trying to identify talent and get them in the pipeline and keep an eye on them and say, hey, when you're 13, let's see if we can get you into the academy if you're good enough. So the Soccer in the Community program, not only is it a scouting network and camp network for the Fire, but it is a great way for the club to connect with the various communities. And I know for me, being here in Arlington Heights and coaching with one of the house leagues here, they are trying to do some camps now in Arlington Heights, and they've had conversations with our park district. And so it really is kind of a way that the club can partner with local communities and do these soccer-centered events. So I think that's a cool thing that the Fire have really been pushing this past year, if not for much longer before that. So I'm very happy that one of their coaches got to come out and actually run a practice with my team, with my third graders. Yep, I had to pay the nominal fee. I'm not going to say that it's all goodwill, but I was happy to do it and get a little different voice in the head of my kids, and just to let you know what they're working on at the third grade level with some of these youth camps. The first thing that the coach did is you're always moving. And he and I agreed that we don't necessarily want to put these kids through fitness drills. You don't want 8, 10, 11-year-olds like just running for the sake of running, especially if you're only practicing once or twice a week. How much fitness is that going to give you? So his idea was all these drills, just keep the kids moving, keep them moving, keep them moving. One of the games they played is everyone paired up, and the kids would play rock, paper, scissors, and the kid who lost was the defender. The kid who won was the attacker and would take the ball and turn and go, and the defender had to, at that point, try and steal the ball from him. They did it first without the ball, and I think that's what's key in coaching youth. They explain it, you do it once slow, without the ball, you do it up to speed, and then you add the ball in, and that way it allows the kids to get to that point and develop through it, rather than them just fumbling over a game with the ball in the first try. So you were always moving. The goal was to stay with your man or lose your defender. The drills, I noticed he coned off a box and kept the kids in a tight space. And I've heard this idea before. Instead of telling youth kids, like, you only have 3 passes or 3 touches, then you have to pass. You only have, everything's 1 touch. You put them in a tight space, and they automatically will learn to only use 2, 1, maybe no more than 3 touches, because they're in such a tight space they don't have the time to take the extra touches. So that is one way to increase the speed of play without yelling it and coaching it. Shrink the size of the field that you're on. But what was great is they're also teaching as much as coaching. So there was always a speaking part, setting up the game, what you're trying to get out of the game, what skill you're going to learn, and then after the drill is over, explaining how you can use it in game situations. So it was a great teaching moment, and if anyone out there is interested in getting involved in youth coaching, I think these are lessons that can be expanded, and part of the reason that's why I wanted to share it with you all. As far as how it affected their game on Saturday, not much, because my kids got absolutely rocked for the first time this season. They were winning games by 5 goals on average their first 5 games, and this game they lost 7-3, I think, at least 7-3. So good lesson for them, and maybe now they'll heed the words of me and the Chicago Fire youth coach and not get too full of themselves. Yeah, even third graders can kind of start falling into the trap of believing their own hype. But anyway, getting back to the Chicago Fire, as fun as that was, just something to look out for during this decision day. Now, if you look in the Eastern Conference, as I said, the Fire eliminated. They're fighting to see if they're going to be the worst or second, third worst team in the Eastern Conference. But there still is a lot up for on decision day. There is a lot of seeding that is up, and in the Eastern Conference at least, you have the first 7 spots set. Miami, Columbus, Cincinnati, Orlando. Those are your top 4. New York City, Charlotte, New York Red Bulls are 5 through 7. You've got DC and Montreal currently in the play-in game, but Philly and Atlanta are also able to play in. However, if those 2 teams win, you got 4 teams sitting on 40 points potentially here. How do they do tiebreakers in the MLS playoffs? Well, it's a good thing they put an article out on this on MLSsoccer.com, and let me run you through the tie-breaking procedures. Obviously, seeding is based on points, 3 for a win, 1 for a draw, 0 for a loss. If teams are tied on points at the end of the season, the first tiebreaker, which is a little different than other leagues around the world, is total number of wins. It's not goal differential like you see in most tournaments or in other leagues. In Major League Soccer, the first tiebreaker for playoff seeding is total number of wins. I kind of like that. Yeah, I know goal differential is the traditional way of doing it, and it rewards offense, but, you kind of get into the old running up the score trap. Do we really want to see that? Plus, we've seen teams now start to take the regular season just a little bit more seriously, especially the last month of the year, when they think there may be a tiebreaker scenario, and go for those wins, whether they're on the road or at home, instead of just trying to play for a draw on the road. So that it has had a little bit of an effect to make some teams go for it and get the wins. So first tie-breaking procedure, total number of wins. Second tiebreaker, goal differential, as we know. Third tiebreaker, goals for. If teams are still tied after wins, goal differential, and goals scored, then it gets into disciplinary points per match. Here's how you score disciplinary points. And there's a lot of math here over the course of the season. Straight red, 7 points. Second yellow card resulting in a red, or a soft red, 7 points. Every yellow card is 3, every technical staff warning is 2, and every foul is 1. So the team that has the least amount of disciplinary points would win the tiebreaker. Of note, a club can only receive a maximum of 7 points for any individual incident. So if you foul someone and get a yellow card, you're not getting 4 points. It's just the maximum 3 for the yellow card. Fifth tiebreaker, away goal differential, then away goals, home goal differential, home goals, and then if teams are still tied after 8 layers of tiebreakers, wins, goal differential, goals scored, disciplinary points, away goal differential, away goals scored, home goal differential, home goals scored. So again, there's no tiebreaker for goals conceded. If they're still tied after all 8 of those, if there's 2 teams tied, it comes down to a coin toss. If there's 3 or more teams tied, they're drawing lots. And I don't know if they're just pulling names out of a hat, if they've got some sort of computer system, if it's ping pong balls, but that's what it comes down to. And as much as I would hate to have that happen for a team, kind of maybe want to see it, just curious how it would shake out. But that is the tie-breaking procedure for Major League Soccer. And if you look to the Western Conference, though, all the 9 playoff teams are set in the Western Conference. Galaxy, LAFC, Seattle, and Salt Lake, those are currently your top 4. Houston, Colorado, Minnesota round out the locks, and then Vancouver and Portland are playing in the play-in game, at least as of now. There is a 4-point difference between 6th and 9th place, and between 6th and 3rd place, there is a 6-point difference. So it's very tight in the West. You're going to see some jockeying for position and seeding, and hopefully those, Vancouver, Portland, Minnesota, Colorado, they're all going to be trying to get out of that play-in game and get into a lock first round. So that's what we're looking at come decision day. Make sure you go check out your standings and check out your matchups and see how that's all going to shake out. Turning now towards the Chicago Fire and their offseason. There have been some articles written by MLS pundits who have kind of talked about what they expect from the Fire and what they've seen. I want to go over a couple of those articles. The first one was written by Tom Boget a couple weeks back on September 30th, and this is his State of the Roster and Transfer Priorities, part of his offseason guide series over on GiveMeSport.com. And he starts it with another year, another season with no playoffs for the Chicago Fire. This was prior to Berhalter's announcement of being the coach. But here's what Tom Boget had to say about the Fire a couple weeks back. The good, last winter's club record signing Hugo Kuipers is clearly a good player and a good goal scorer. He's a plug-and-play finisher who can go from good to great with a better team around him. 10 goals in 2,500 minutes, nothing special, but it's not as if the group around him is creating a ton of chances. His underlying numbers are middling, but I'm putting that more on the circumstance of playing on the last place team than him being a subpar DP. We'll see next year. So that's a good evaluation at Kuipers, that he can't outplay the other 10 players on the field. They can't outplay the talent level or where Chicago is in the standings and how they're performing. But if they get better players around him, expect him to improve. He also talks about how Aragoni and Acosta should be starters moving forward. Selassie, Herbers, Pineda, and Gutman, who should also remain on the squad. That's Tom Bogert's perspective. He does talk about how Tehran wanted to go to Europe and was heading possibly to Europe a year ago, and it didn't work out, but he is a piece the Chicago Fire could build around on the defensive side of things. What he wants to see in the offseason is getting first-team production from academy graduates is a great way to extend the salary cap, but now it's time to invest in the discretionary spend, transfers, salaries, DPs, U22s, and they're going to be doing that too. So those are some of the good things he wants to see them keep going. The best part of the team is 2 open DP slots, a ton of money from ownership, and a new regime to spend it. And I think we're all in agreement on that, Fire fans. That's something that we've been talking about now for a while. They just needed to get the right people into the front office, or at least get whoever they think are the right people into the front office with the right spending patterns. Here's what Tom Bogert says for the bad of this season of Chicago Fire. And it starts off with a picture of Xherdan Shaqiri. And that's about it, right? And he talks about how the Fire seem to be in a constant state of rebuild. And then he runs off the DPs: Ignacio Eliseda, Robert Barrett, Xherdan Shaqiri, Jairo Torres, Gaston Jimenez, Usman Dumbia. Yeah. Then he runs off Rafa Wicki, Ezra Hendrickson, Frank Klopas, and now we're into Gregg Berhalter. So he definitely has hit on the fact that the Fire just keep turning over, and going from bad to bad to bad to bad, or bad to worse to more worse. So that is something that he has pointed out, that the Fire have hamstrung themselves because of that, as well as the salaries of Rafa Chihos, $1.3 million, Gaston Jimenez, $1.6 million, Chris Mueller, $712,000, Arnosu K, $700,000, Tobias Sahlquist, $450,000, and others. So he's looking at some of those guys being moved, bought out, transferred in order to free up more cap space. He does talk about flexibility as being a positive for the Fire. Like we said, 2 DP spots that are open, and he puts a picture of Yorgos Koutsias in that flexibility photo. Now, I don't know if Tom Bogert's choosing this or if his if his editors are the ones putting those pictures up, but he doesn't actually mention Koutsias in his article here at all. Or I should say, he does talk about it, that they might actually transfer him out if they're going to look to bring in some more under 22 players. So that's as far as he talks about Koutsias. I would love to see him stick around. I've said it in other episodes. I think a Koutsias Kuipers dual striker system could work out very well if that's how Berhalter wants to play. I don't know Berhalter ever playing a dual striker system, even when he was coaching Columbus before the USMNT, and he got Jassy Zardes to be a star striker, right? So that's the meat and potatoes there of what Tom Bogert's article is. But he says the Chicago Fire, just the fact that they've signed Berhalter and could bring in 2 DPs, if they do, that would be enough to give them an A+ grade in his mind. So that is Tom Bogert's analysis of the Chicago Fire pre-Berhalter signing. Now, as far as the Berhalter announcement goes, you can go onto the Chicago Fire's website and read the open letter to the Fire fans that Gregg Berhalter laid out for everyone. I'm going to pick out a couple things that he says. We have our sights set on sustained success, creating an identity on and off the field that you'll be proud of and ensure the Fire competitive year in and year out. Okay, it's kind of standard talk, but we haven't heard it from other coaches and sporting front offices prior to this. But then he goes on to say, my vision is simple. Build one of the top clubs in North America. Yeah, you heard that right. The whole continent. In CONCACAF. He wants the Chicago Fire to be on par with clubs like Columbus, Miami, LAFC, Monterrey, Chivas, Tigres. That's what his goal is for the Chicago Fire. God bless him. I hope he gets there. It's not going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years, I don't think. But to get there, he can put a plan in place, and I'm looking forward to it. You got to have ambition, and I don't think anyone. And yeah, it could be pie in the sky. You could be like, "Oh, that's ridiculous. He's talking crazy." But that's what you've got to do when you come into a situation like the Chicago Fire. There's one thing to be said for some of the past coaches who come in very pragmatic and are like, "Well, looking at our roster, looking at our cap space, looking at the competition, it'd be nice if we made the playoffs. I think that's doable." It's one thing to be realistic, but when you are coming in and setting goals for your company, for your organization, or for yourself, shoot for the moon here. Like, let's set our sights there, and how do we build towards that? And that should always be the end goal. But you're not going to go from worst in the Eastern Conference of MLS to best club in North America overnight. You've got to set those incremental goals, and hopefully that's what we see from Gregg Berhalter and co. as he builds out this team. And he talks about it in his welcome letter. Developing talent will remain a priority and a bedrock. He likes the homegrown pipeline, and he wants to bring in international talent that can complement that and supersede it. And then he says, your role as fans, this is what you as fans need to do too. So it's great that he is acknowledging all parts of the organization, from the front office to the players and the academy down to the fans as well. The other post-season article here, almost post-season article, comes from Matt Doyle over at MLSsoccer.com. It says, what did we learn from the Fire in their 2024 season? Number one, Gregg Berhalter, new head coach. That's the first thing. And we've talked about that a lot. But Matt Doyle says this is a good thing. Consistent track record of success with the crew, and is doing it on a smaller budget than he'll have in Chicago. Also, success with the usmnt. Whatever your feelings are there, he won more games than he lost. The U.S. did really, really well in CONCACAF. Take that as what you want to build off of. And then, as terrible as they were internationally against European opponents, top 50 opponents, whatever it was, take that as a learning lesson. Now he's got those lessons in his bag now. He didn't have that when he went into those games, when he went into that match against the Netherlands, when he went into Copa America against Uruguay and Panama, right? Now he's got those lessons that he can build from in Chicago. The second point that Matt Doyle points out, a positive one for the Chicago Fire, there's actually a decent core. And here's what Matt Doyle says about that. It's funny that Heights is finally on his way out after a winter window that was almost certainly his best as a sporting director. Yep, signing Kuipers, signing Acosta, bringing in Gutman, things like that. Also, Doyle goes on to say, they didn't sign any disastrous new contracts or hand out any inexplicable extensions. There's not a ton of money coming off the books, but there's some, and potentially a good bit more if owner Joe Mansueto okays a buyout, and Doyle and everyone else would be shocked if he didn't. So, between Kuipers and Acosta, he goes on, as well as homegrown Brian Gutierrez and Chris Brady, along with useful players in or entering their prime, like Gutman, Aragoni, Turan, Pineda, Salase, this isn't a complete tear-down job. It's not great by any stretch, but you don't have to look hard to see pieces worth keeping and even featuring in the years to come. We just didn't see much of it in 2024. So that's his other take. His next postseason thought on the Fire, they've got some playmaking. They've got to get some playmaking in the squad. And he looks at Gutierrez as more of a secondary or tertiary chance creator, not a build around him number 10, and saying, yeah, Kuipers needs more service. We recall it was supposed to revolve around Shaqiri, but he doesn't want to talk about Shaqiri anymore, and honestly, who does? So Doyle goes on to say, who are the 5 players that you want to build around? Kuipers, Gutierrez, Acosta, Gutman, and Brady. And those are guys we've all talked about on this show, about a core, not just a core of players, but a literal spine up the center of the field. Yeah, Gutman's out on the wing, so you're at least getting a defender in the mix there. But those are guys you can build right up the middle of the field with. And if you're going to be a successful team, that's where you need to have your talent. He finishes out his article by saying, a name worth keeping an eye on in Chicago's hunt for a DP this winter Weston McKennie. The Fire would have to spend big, but Mansueto's never had an issue with that, and it's a move that would make a ton of sense for Wes, both financially and in terms of getting the keys to a team built around him instead of being just a role player. Now, we've seen that McKennie's having a pretty good season with Ventus, and with the new boss, he's proven himself and is kind of getting back into favor. However, it's hard to pass up a move home. It's hard to pass up the money that can be thrown at him. It's hard to pass up living in the U.S. and you know, the stability that comes with playing in Major League Soccer from a scheduling as well as a paycheck standpoint. So, yeah, Juventus, one of the biggest clubs in the world. Still a lot to be said for coming home playing in MLS for a couple seasons at least. Doyle finishes his article. The Fire would still have budget to use on other spots, with center back being the obvious one to target, but the story of Chicago's futility of the past 15 years is a story of them missing time and again on their DPs. Get the coach right, get those DPs right, and this club might finally be able to turn the page. And Doyle, would we all love to agree with you on that one, and we'd like to check that out. Running low on time, so I won't talk too much about the USMNT, but we did get to see new head coach Mauricio Pochettino's first game, a 2-0 victory against Panama, where Pulisic assists Musa on the first goal, and then we get a Ricardo Pepi goal to ice it in the second half, 2-0. Again, great runs up the left wing, crosses into the box. Striker, all they got to do is tap it in and just finish it off. So a lot is being said in this camp about who's the striker going to be. Just heard news today, October 15th, that Florin Balogun hurt his shoulder. He's going to be out for a couple months, so the U.S. can't call him in. There's still a lot of talk about who's better, Haji Wright, Ricardo Pepi, Josh Sargent. Like, who are the guys that should be starting when it comes to the real games? That conversation is always going to be happening. I still think you got to consider Brandon Vasquez, bring him back into training camp, see what he can do. I haven't looked up his season in Monterrey, but it got off to a good start. I don't know what he's doing right now. There's also rumors that Monterrey might go after Cucho Hernandez, so maybe they're not happy with Brandon Vasquez. I don't know, but that's just all speculation here. And usually with those strikers, it's kind of who's hot at the moment that you're going to call in for the matches. U.S. is also playing Mexico tonight, October 15th, late game, 9:30 p.m. So I'm getting my recording in, and then I'm getting my butt on the couch to watch that game. We'll see. You know, everyone knows the rivalry here, but at the same time, both of these national teams need to start looking to the future. Yes, you want to win this game, and Pochettino even came out and said it. I want to win games. It's very contrasted to how Berhalter was using each friendly game and even using the World Cup qualifying games to a certain extent to kind of build and get ready for the actual tournament matches. Whereas Pochettino's like, we want to win every game. We need to instill that in our players, that we want to go out and win every game, and we're going to work hard, and we're going to fight hard, and we're going to play the players who are going to give us the best chance of winning. But at the same time, he still has to be able to know that we got to build a little bit of a squad here. And Mexico, same thing. They haven't beaten the United States in Mexico in 15 years. They haven't beaten the United States over the last couple of years, losing 3 finals to them. And they're also trying to win the game, but looking to see who's going to be their core, who's going to be their star players come World Cup 2026. So it's going to be interesting to see how this match plays out from a roster standpoint and a tactical standpoint. The other headline, people are ripping on Pochettino for allowing Pulisic and McKennie and I think also Pepi to go back to their clubs and miss the Mexico game. Number one, it's a friendly. And yeah, we did just talk about building that culture of a winning mentality. I think they said Pepi and McKennie and whoever else got released to go back were kind of picked up a couple knocks. They don't want to have them go through the Mexico game and get hurt. Also, you know, Pulisic is vital to his club. We know he's got the role on the USMNT. He's always, as good as he's playing for his club, he's always playing that much better for the U.S. So I don't mind it. And, you know, I'm going to say it tongue-in-cheek here, with McKennie and Pulisic not in this Mexico game, who are the Mexican players going to go after to choke this match? I don't know. They're going to have to figure that out, too. That's a growing experience for them there. They got to find some other Americans to choke, right? But in all seriousness, this is going to be a time for some of the other American players to step up and really kind of leave their mark on what is the best soccer rivalry in North America, without a doubt. So something I'm looking forward to, just seeing who kind of steps up, who kind of brings the intensity, and yeah, let's get another result. Let's get a win against Mexico tonight. But as always, listeners, thank you so much for taking the time to join me, hear a little bit about MLS, Chicago Fire, my thoughts, my takes, all that good stuff. Like, subscribe, rate, review, share the show, grow the show, and as always, let's go USA, let's go Fire.